Okay, so I will talk for the reminder about the expedition. So yes, we flew in January of this year from Southampton to I think the first stop was I think we went to Sweden. I think we flew to Sweden, then we flew to Norway, and then we flew all the way out to Svalbard on a very small plane to Svalbard. And this is what's called an archipelago. I think I get that right. So it's a group of islands, obviously quite far north from Norway, and it is the most northerly place where you have a human village. So it's like kind of closest you can be, closest you can live at least to the Arctic Circle, and the closest you can be to the North Pole without being on a boat, basically. And everyone who lives, all the humans at least, who live on Svalbard, live in this village called Longyearbyen. And you'll see lots of photos of that. But yeah, it's a very small village and it has an airport. So you basically get off the plane and you're already in the village. And then the telescope is on a hill, basically. So this is a view from looking down from the radar and the telescope observatory down into the valley where all the people's houses are. And then kind of round the corner here is the university and the airport. Now, this is what it looks like in Longyearbyen in the spring. And it would look like this all day. They have daylight for most of the day because they are in the Arctic Circle. So when I went there in January, it looked like this all the time. For 24 hours, we didn't see any sunlight at all. So it was very, very weird. It's just like a whole week of darkness, basically, a whole week of nighttime. So this is a photo taken from in the village at midday, lunchtime, and this is darkness. So you do kind of get the sky gets a little bit more kind of bluer, if you like, kind of when the sun is kind of close to rising. But because we were in the kind of dead of winter, the sun never rises up over the horizon. So it kind of looks like it's going to, and then it gets dark. So yeah, it's very, very weird. I don't think I could honestly live there like a lot of the people do who work at the university, because it's just so strange. The reason why we have this kind of 24-hour darkness or 24-hour daylight in the Arctic Circle is because even though you have the tilt of the Earth's axis, the sunlight can never reach places that kind of on the Arctic Circle or above. It does mean that obviously in the summer they have 24-hour sunlight, but the people I spoke to said they actually prefer the 24-hour darkness because in the sunlight they felt a lot of pressure to be out doing stuff all the time, especially when they know that it will suddenly be dark soon for 24 hours. So also things like sleeping, you have to have your blackout curtains and all that kind of thing. So they actually preferred the darkness over the constant sunlight, which I found very weird. Okay, so this is us. This is who I was with. This is me, just in case you don't recognize me. So I was doing the kind of mask situation before the COVID. This was basically because it was so cold. So we all look like this, very wrapped up, warm, because it was minus 20 degrees and windy. So it actually felt colder than this. So yes, many layers. I think I'm wearing about 4 coats here at this time. We did have to go outside a lot. Normally when you're observing, you would be able to sit in a control room for the whole time and just move the telescopes or the radar remotely. But because we were actually fixing a camera, which is on the side of the building, to take all these images for the citizen science project, we did have to go outside quite a bit. So this is David. So he's a PhD student, and his research I'll talk to a bit about at the end. But the data we're taking for doing this citizen science project is also obviously very relevant to his research. And then this is Dan, who has been working on the Aurora for at least 13 years. And he was the person who actually designed the camera as part of his PhD. So he knows a lot about it. So yeah, that was the team of us. And this is me, obviously very excited that I got to see the Aurora with my eyes. So Dan has been up to Svalbard about at least 12 times through his career. And he said we were very lucky. Yeah, so this was us in the control room. The only screen that I really understood what was going on was this one, which showed what was happening outside overhead, so we could tell if there was basically an aurora, and then make sure that all the cameras and everything was looking at it simultaneously. We did have to go to the radar at very bizarre times. So yeah, this is true. This is kind of 5 o'clock in the morning, because it was constant nighttime. Basically, we just went to the radar on based on a schedule when we thought the aurora would be the brightest, basically. So yeah, we had a quite weird kind of schedule in our day. And yeah, you can read a lot more about kind of our daily goings on in the AuroraQuest blog if you're interested. I can put a link in the chat, because yeah, it was quite the time of it. But we did get some time to have kind of a rest away from kind of working in the radar room, at least. So we did some light tag. So this is David kind of making his name next to the radar. There was time for napping, and there was also time for ice skating. So Dan here has also he'd been doing lessons in ice skating in the Gosport ice skating rink in Portsmouth beforehand. And then because of the extreme cold in Svalbard, there is lots of kind of just random bits of ice which you can play hockey. Most people play hockey on them. The only problem is that because they are just outside, the ice doesn't get you don't get one of those machines that kind of smooth the ice over every hour. So I actually fell over twice down these massive kind of big holes in the ice from people's skates. So I wasn't having the greatest time. But as you will see in this video, Dan was very good at go presenting Dr. Dan Whiter, ice skater and scientist. Doesn't just twirl there. And at this point in time, Dan would have been the most northerly ice skater in the world. So basically, a lot of the stuff we were doing there, we could be like, I am the person who is the most northerly person doing this activity, because there's hardly any people who live in the village, and obviously anything you do, you would be the most northerly person doing it. So that was quite funny. This was on our flight on the way home. And I took this picture just because I thought it was funny, because this is very thick snow and ice, which is on the runway. And then there was actually loads of snow on the wings of the plane. So we got on the plane, and then there was this massive like de-icer machine, which basically de-iced the whole plane before it was able to fly. And it just made me laugh, because if that was a situation that we had in the UK, there would be no planes flying at all. But I guess they are very used to this type of situation. Okay, so to get up to the control room where the radar and the camera was, which was on the mountain, we had to kind of drive up from our kind of guest house, which was at the university in the village. And this is basically the view from inside the car. So this is it looks like a road, but it's basically just some snow that's been ploughed out by a snowmobile. And this is a road that goes all the way up to the radar. This light you can see here is actually from a helicopter, and it's searchlight. So we were told, I took this photo because I was like, why is there a helicopter with a searchlight so close to the road? And then when we got to the top of the radar, and we met with the engineer who works there, he told us this was actually a helicopter from, I guess, the council, the people who live on the island. They have this helicopter to look for and try and scare away polar bears. So we were very close to a polar bear at this point in time. Again, this is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it is obviously pitch black. So what they do is they try and use the sound of the helicopter and the kind of searchlight from the helicopter to scare the polar bear away. So there are more polar bears on the island of Svalbard than there are humans. And they're a protected species, obviously, because they're so important and lovely. But they are wild animals and they are attracted to food. So it's kind of normal for them to try and come towards the village. But the people there obviously don't want to kill them, but they don't want them to obviously be killed by the polar bear. So they try and drive the polar bear away. So this is a very kind of, well, exciting afterwards to be this close potentially to a polar bear. So I think at this point they managed to scare the polar bear away, or it left and went into the valley kind of away from the people. So that was the one night. But then on the following night something interesting happened. This is just a picture to show you for scale how big polar bears are. So when they stand on their back legs, they are really big. So this is a stuffed polar bear that is in one of the pubs that we used to go to in the evening for scale. And then this is a Facebook message that we got. So us three were at the radar on our own. The engineer Martin had gone home, but then he sent us this message to say, which he translated from Norwegian for us, that the polar bear was basically back and had been observed in this place, Boltedalen, which is basically the bottom of the hill, which you'd pass through on the way to the village. The helicopter was on its way. And the governor, which is basically the council, says, don't visit the area. So basically we were trapped in the radar room until we heard word that they'd managed to kind of scare the polar bear away. So that was, again, exciting. We were looking out the window at the helicopter, kind of deciding what we would do if the polar bear came up onto the mountain. We found out later that what had actually happened when the polar bear had been spotted again is that he'd been seen by a tour group of people who were on snowmobiles. And I think this guy, the one who's looking very happy with himself in the green coat, he was at the front of the snowmobiles. There's like loads of them in a line as part of the tour group. And his first instinct was good, in that when the polar bear suddenly appeared, he punched the polar bear on the nose and the polar bear ran away. So everyone who lives and works on Svalbard is usually trained to use a rifle should they need to, protect themselves from polar bears, and also a flare gun. But thankfully, in this instance, the tour guide, who would have had a rifle on his back, he didn't really have time, I guess, to get the rifle out. So luckily, just punching it on the nose was enough to scare it away. This is Dan here, just a picture of him doing his training. So he would have done this kind of many years ago before he started to go to Svalbard regularly. So the first point of action to scare away the polar bear is the flare gun. So it's very loud, which is why he's got these ear defenders on. And it also has very bright light coming from it. So hopefully that would be enough to scare the polar bear away. But if it's not, and it still keeps coming towards you, then you might need to get a rifle. But obviously that's the last kind of thing you'd want to do. So the people in Svalbard have been known to kind of airlift the polar bear. So they can't just scare the polar bear away. If it keeps coming back like this one, they do get the point where they will tranquilize the polar bear and airlift it back to kind of a place which is much further away from the village. I think after we left, not this same polar bear, but another one did keep coming into the town, and they did unfortunately have to, someone had to shoot it with a gun and kill it, because it just kept coming back, and it was kind of in the area where the supermarket is and there's lots of people and stuff like that. But anyway, this close encounter for me was really cool. I felt like Lyra here. I don't know if you've ever read the book His Dark Materials or watched the BBC show, which is happening right now on BBC. It's a really good show and also a really good book. It's probably one of my favourite books from when I was your age. Of course, I took the book with me to read. But yeah, I wasn't expecting to have a close encounter with a polar bear. So that was really cool. I was going to say... I can't remember what I was going to say. Oh yeah, but so basically, because of the nature of Svalbard and the polar bears being more polar bears than than humans, everything in Svalbard is polar bear themed, basically. So even this bowl for my cereal has polar bears on it. And I'll admit that when I read this book when I was your age, I didn't actually think Svalbard was a real place. I thought it was just made up for the book. So yeah, it was really, really cool for me to be able to go there and be in Svalbard, be doing real science into kind of auroral physics and dust, if you like. But yeah, sadly, I didn't meet Yorick or any other talking armored bears, but maybe next time. Who knows? Okay, so this is what it would look like driving from the village up to the telescope when it is kind of in the more kind of spring, summer months, when you have sunlight. Obviously, there is signs everywhere warning you of the potential polar bears. And yeah, so this is the where the what am I doing for time? So this is where our science station is. So it has a radar, it has cameras, and then the lucky part about this is that there is a road that goes all the way up there. And the reason why there is a road which is ploughed very well in the winter is because the whole island is powered by a coal mine. So the big trucks getting the coal up and down the mountain, they need to have access to the coal mine. So they have a massive ploughing machine which ploughs the road regularly. So that is really good for us as scientists, because we can kind of use the fact they've already ploughed the road to get up to where it is. So this is what it looks like when you've ploughed it. Still very snowy, still very dark, but obviously still danger of polar bears. This wasn't the time I was there, but they have had to in the past kind of dig themselves out or get the people at the telescope to kind of tow them out of a snowdrift. So there's two radars on top of in the kind of science center. There's the 42 meter dish, which just always points up in the sky along a specific magnetic field line, which is known to have, I guess, a lot of activity which is happening above it. And then this one, which is a bit smaller and is steerable. So if there is a particular amount of activity, if you like, happening in a certain direction, then you can actually steer this one to look in the right direction. And radar is, I guess, radar technology is quite simple in the fact that you're sending a radio wave up into space, and depending on the kind of density of the air above it, the reflected radar that comes back down will tell you information about the different densities at different altitudes. So we use a combination of the radar, which is controlled from the control room, the camera that we have on the side of the building, and then a spectrograph, which is up higher on the hill. And just for scale, this is how big they are in terms of polar bears. Okay, so yeah, so this is the town down here, the road coming up the mountain, the two radars, and then this is the little camera on the side of the building, which is Southampton's camera that Dan designed, which is the data we are using. So there is quite a big, quite a shoddy ladder, if you like, with some rope tying it onto the side of the building, and that is how you get up to the camera. So we were up and down this a lot, and I don't think anyone had filled out a risk assessment for how dangerous this actually was. But yeah, all part of the adventure. So inside here is a kind of, well, you have your telescope to kind of reflect the light using the lenses and mirrors into these three cameras, which are looking for the red, the green, and the blue light, and then combining that together into the data or the small video clip you will see on the Citizen Science page. I think that's it. But basically, there is a funny story about this ladder. So me and David were fixing something in the camera inside here, and David was still on the platform, and I was going back down the ladder. It's obviously very dark, and we have our red torches on our heads so that we don't give out any light and destroy the light in the telescope. And as I was a few rungs down the ladder, there was suddenly a big beam of light. So I thought it was a helicopter and that there was potentially a polar bear at the bottom of the ladder. So I did some swearing and ran back up the ladder very quickly. But thankfully, it wasn't actually a helicopter. It was just a car coming down the mountain road, and its headlights had basically just looked a bit like a searchlight. Now, to get up to the spectrograph, which is another camera which is able to look at light from different elements, that is at the KHO Observatory, which is even higher up the mountain than the radar. But there isn't a road, basically, because we're at the height of the coal mine where we are with the radar. So to get to the observatory, we actually had to go in this thing, which is essentially a tank, which the University of Svalbard has loaned or bought, I guess, from the army. So you basically pile into the back of here, and then the one of the kind of scientists, astronomers, is driving the truck, the tank, up the mountain. It's very loud, and again, it's quite an experience to go in this, to go up to the spectrograph on top of the mountain. So the spectrograph looks like this, and it is basically just looking at the different wavelengths of light which are giving off at different heights in the atmosphere, and then the information that we have from knowing at kind of what height different elements are, so what height the nitrogen is and things like that, will actually tell us information about kind of the energy of the aurora at that height, and also the temperature of the aurora at that height, which is really interesting for learning about the space weather and other types of weather. So the camera that we were interested in, or the Southampton uses, is called the AS camera, and is only looking at a very small part of the sky here. So this is the full sky image that I showed you in the control room, and we're constantly just looking at this little blue square of sky, and then constantly taking images of what we see, and that looks something like this. So the research we're trying to do is basically a combination of a normal kind of camera, a spectrograph to look at different elements, a radar, and when we put all these things together, we're able to model the temperature and the energy at different heights, basically, in the atmosphere. And that is basically what David's PhD is all about, is trying to see the temperature changes and how that is associated with the structure that we see in the aurora. I've kind of mentioned this earlier, but the reason why kind of you as individuals should care about the aurora research is because from a kind of blue skies point of view, it's important to learn about our magnetic field and how it interacts with the sun, but also because of these many satellites, especially all these GPS satellites that Elon Musk has put up there, will be affected by kind of solar, wind and aurora activity. So it's important that we understand that, because if we suddenly lose the internet and the GPS satellites, then there will be chaos. And also weather, the Met Office is now recognizing that our weather that we experience on Earth is can be slightly influenced by the amount of auroral activity. Okay, so the way you can help us kind of after this talk, if you go onto your computers, is to go on the AuroraZoo.org, just put AuroraZoo.org in, and we have basically 12 years of data from this camera, kind of the whole time that Dan has been doing this research, and we need your help. So the questions you'll be asked on the AuroraZoo.org website, first of all, you'll be asked to look at the shape of the aurora you see in the video you're being shown. So is it an arc? Is there multiple arcs? Do they look more like rays? Is there aurora everywhere? Then you'll be asked to ask about the motion. So is it drifting across? Is there curls? Is it rippling? Now, these two types of classification were actually made up by PhD students, because this is the first time this type of research has ever been done into the small structures we see. They actually got the job of giving a name to this kind of shapes and features. So they named this one chocolate sauce. They thought it looked like chocolate sauce in some milk. And this one, they called it psychedelic kaleidoscope. So that's quite cool, because these names will actually appear in papers now, which are about this research. And then you'll also be asked about how fuzzy it is. Okay, so please do go on the website, AuroraZoo.org, and help us with that. You just need to click on classify, which is in the top right hand corner, and you'll be shown this type of screen, and you press play on the little video, and then you can basically answer the questions. There's no wrong answers. Your best guess is fine because it's all based on statistics. So if like 5 people say it is a certain classification, then we assume that the majority of people are correct.